Welcome to Crossroads. The United Nations is nearing an imminent financial collapse, according to the UN Secretary General. Might even partially go away. And this is happening as Trump is withdrawing key U.S. funding. And, well, the international organization is now facing a financial crisis because its members are not paying their dues. Also, on another topic, spies from Russia, China, and Iran, especially China, are getting more aggressive within the United States, even going after people in our own country. And meanwhile, guess what? Non-citizens can still vote in American elections. And this is even approved, in fact. This is after a federal judge blocked a Trump order that tried to stop non-citizens from voting in our elections. I'll be going into these topics and a whole lot more today. Make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment. Let's get started. First of all, President Donald Trump has withdrawn key U.S. funding from the United Nations, a lot of different branches, even just recently, in fact. And the international organization is now facing the risk of what they're calling imminent financial collapse. That's according to UN Secretary General António Guterres. Now, Trump may also be signaling that this could be kind of the idea. Trump is saying, well, we want to have a big shift in global power. And he's rejecting globalism, the false song of globalism, and he's celebrating the return of American dominance. Now, this is BBC and what they're saying. They say the United Nations is at risk of imminent financial collapse due to member states not paying their fees, the body said is warned. Now, look, get this, okay? Trump withdrew funding from the UN. The UN technically has enough funding. The problem is, the members of the UN just don't pay their bills. And without America basically footing the bill for basically the whole world, not all of them, but a lot of them, they're actually finding that, hey, it looks like America was Atlas holding up the sky, and by George, the sky is falling on all of us. Now, António Guterres said the UN faced a financial crisis which was deepening threatening program delivery, meaning they're not going to be able to deliver the roles they play, meaning, well, they don't have money to do what they do. And the money could actually run out by July. That's coming up very quickly for them. Now, it says he wrote in a letter to all 193 member states that they had to honor their mandatory payments or overhaul the organization's financial rules to avoid collapse. And that's because, well, America used to actually pay the bills. Trump is pulling us out of not all of the organizations within it, but many. And a lot of them don't pay the money. They don't pay it on a lot of things. They don't pay what they agreed to with NATO. They don't pay what they agreed to with the UN. They don't pay quite a few things. And America has basically been paying it for them. Now, note this is after the UN's largest contributor, the United States, refused to contribute to its regular and peacekeeping budgets and withdrew from several agencies it called a waste of taxpayer dollars. You don't say. It says several other members are in arrears or simply refusing to pay. They just say, you know what? America pays the bill. Why am I going to bother? Now, notes further in. At its headquarters in Geneva, signs warning of a situation have been put up everywhere. In an almost desperate attempt to save cash, the escalators are regularly turned off and the heating turned down. Now, why is that a big deal? Who remembers what Trump experienced when he went to the recent UN meetings? Trump steps onto the escalator and the escalator turns off right as he steps foot on it. Now, Trump called for the person who did that to be fired. There were also issues where when Trump was talking about key issues, somebody just turned off his microphone. And Trump was alleging this was not because of cash-saving initiatives. Trump decided America should save cash instead after that experience. It was not because of cash-saving initiatives, but that somebody did not like him and basically hit the off button on him. That's the allegation from Trump. The United Nations denies it. But it is kind of interesting now they're saying, well, we're going to have to turn the escalators off because apparently it runs so much money on an escalator. I don't know how much it costs to actually run an escalator, but they're saying to save money they have to do that. Personally, I would take that as more of a symbolic move because they're trying to make it look like Nobody hit the off button on Trump is what it looks like, but we'll see. Now, further in it says that Guterres said the integrity of the entire system depended on states adhering to their obligation under the UN Charter to pay their assessed contributions, adding that 77% of the total owed had been paid in 2025, leaving a record amount unpaid. Meaning quite a lot of people are just choosing to not pay the bill. It says Guterres set a rule that the UN must return unspent money on particular programs to members if it could not implement a budget, created a double blow in which it was expected to give back cash that does not exist. Hey folks, remember how you gave me that money for the program I never provided to you? Well, I hope you remember how you used to have money because you still don't have it. Now further, and he says, quote, I cannot overstate the urgency of the situation we now face. We cannot execute budgets with uncollected funds nor return funds we never received. No refunds. No refunds. Now, Guterres also wrote, quote, the bottom line is clear. Either all member states honor their obligations to pay in full and on time, or member states must fundamentally overhaul our financial rules to prevent an imminent financial collapse. Now we'll see where it goes from here. Other nations have basically been undermining the United States and American values and principles using the United Nations. Many would say, well, gee, why does this random country in the middle of nowhere have a seat on a major UN organization that gives it, pretty effective power globally? Why is it that a country that contributes nothing to the world is able to boss even the United States around, or very powerful countries around? The simple answer is they've been given a little hat of power through the United Nations. And the United Nations, of course, has created, as it's meant to, kind of an international governing body where countries can come together and agree on global principles. The problem is a lot of the principles it agrees to are utterly against the principles of maybe a free country or a decent country, and especially against the United States. You have totalitarian regimes on the Human Rights Council. You have some of the greatest abusers of human rights trying to dictate to other countries the principles on human rights. You have countries calling for a quote-unquote rules-based order and saying, how dare America undermine the rules-based order? What does that mean? Well, America's operating by rules. We're operating by American rules. They're obviously operating by their rules. And when America operates by its rules and not their rules, they're saying we're not operating by a rules-based order. The question is, whose rules? Who decides the rules? Could we say they're not operating by a rules-based order because they're not following our rules? That is a good question, right? What are the rules they're trying to force? Censorship, surveillance, monitoring, taxation, mass social welfare programs, mass migration, programs meant to undermine one country by propping up others and allowing for things to, again, undermine the values and basic profit of countries that do well by redistributing wealth to those that don't because they've made bad decisions. Is that the rules-based order? You tell me. On Trump's side, of course, he's pushing back against this pretty heavily, and he's actually saying America is now going to be rejecting this kind of international order that has not really made the world a better place. Okay? Now, France, a lot of other countries, even in Europe, they're using the seats through the UN because they're not really that powerful on the global stage otherwise. They're using the power through the UN and through, of course, NATO, of course, to even undermine Donald Trump's efforts to end the Russia-Ukraine war. When Trump had put forward possible peace agreements where you're having tens of thousands of people dying just on an ongoing basis there, they decided to extend the war to keep it going. Now, part of that, of course, was to stop parts of Ukraine to being handed over to Russia. Trump is saying, look, there's no other alternative, and what would you rather do? How many bodies is this worth to you? Is it really worth that many dead young men? You tell me. Of course, France and others are saying, yes, it's worth as many dead men as you can throw into the grinder. We're going to keep it going indefinitely, and here's the money for it. We'll see what happens with that. Canada, another example of this, is calling for a new world order, a break from the United States, because, well, they're saying America is not recognizing the rules-based order. The question again is whose rules? They're going to China, the greatest abuser of human rights in the modern world, a country with the most totalitarian surveillance system the world has ever known, given the fact that, again, we've never seen technology like this. A country that undermines every trade deal, every business deal, violates every one of them, and subverts countries. I will note that Canada was actually called out for this back in the 90s by its own intelligence agency called CSIS, their equivalent to the CIA. There was a report called Sidewinder, and the Canadian Intelligence Service raised concerns that the Canadian government was falling under the control of the Chinese Communist Party. Interesting. I wonder if that has anything to do with what's happening now. On that point, Canada is saying they need to break from the United States and build a new world order, and they're joining with China. Latin America, European powers are trying to force censorship even within the United States, trying to say that, hey, America, rules-based order, we know that you believe in freedom of speech. Well, we don't. This is the rules-based order, and you need to follow our rules. Trump's saying, no, we don't. And they're saying, well, how dare you violate the rules-based order by allowing your citizens to have freedom of speech? Now, Trump is saying the United States will stop following the agendas of this globalist system. The globalist system does nothing but act against us, does nothing but violate American principles, does nothing other than basically rip us off on trade deals, violate deals, not pay their fair share to the UN or NATO, undermine American values, freedom of speech, freedom of belief, freedom of the press, and then try to tell us to step in line. And the question is, well, which path do we want for our country? Trump is rejecting that. And as he rejects it, it's interesting, actually, because it turns out America was Atlas holding up the sky. And Atlas is now shrugging, and that sky is falling down. And of course, as this happens, the United Nations ain't looking so hot. The big question is, it's probably not going to collapse. The hard reality with Trump and everything else is, look, America tends to operate in a 4 to 8 year schedule with the elections, and you can have a very different government come in, next time around. They can go to a minimal budget, they can get rid of a few programs, they can put things on hold. They're not going to get rid of it. They're not going to get rid of it. They're going to put some things on hold, wait for the next election, see how it goes. If they lose again, they'll put things on hold a bit longer. But they will anticipate kind of a reorganizing, and even without that, they will probably try to find a way to keep things going, even without the United States. Now, the problem with that is something that many have raised. You could argue whether, with valid reason or not, against Trump. The reason they say is that America stepping back from that, from the United Nations, will allow other countries to basically gain control of it. You'll have China having a very strong control. You have Russia having very strong control. They're kind of the big kids on the street with America out of the picture, and they're going to dominate it. And the question is, well, what becomes of the international rules-based order if American values are not part of the debate? Many in the United States would say, well, look, already they pushed us out, and already they were trying to use that power to subvert us. That is not in our interest, and maybe we should establish something different. This is the divide now taking place. Now, speaking of globalist policies and foreign interference and the manipulation of other countries, spies from Russia, China, and Iran, it turns out, are getting more aggressive even within the United States, and even targeting people for exercising their values here in our own country. We'll be talking more about this after we come back from a quick break.
All right, just to pause here for a super quick moment. You are, of course, watching Crossroads with Joshua Philipp. I'm just here to share a message about American Hartford Gold, my own personal gold and silver bullion dealer. Now, obviously, the recent tariffs have made the markets super turbulent and volatile. With every new piece of tariff news, the markets seem to either crash up or crash down. And of course, it's worth mentioning that these conditions don't only affect Wall Street. They affect all of us through our investments and our retirement accounts. That's why I'd like to introduce you to a company that I trust and I myself use to secure my own savings, American Hartford Gold. They specialize in helping Americans move our assets into something tangible, into something you can actually hold, which is physical gold and physical silver, two precious metals that act as a hedge against all those decisions being made in Washington, D.C. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They have thousands of 5-star reviews, and they make the whole buying process super simple. Your metals can be shipped directly to your door, or you can transfer your current retirement account to a tax-advantaged gold IRA. And the best part is that right now, American Hartford Gold is offering an exclusive offer. When you call them today and you mention the name Joshua, you could receive up to $15,000 in free silver with your initial investment. Take advantage of their special offer. You can either just call them at 877-260-2764 or text Joshua to 65532. All their information will also be down in the description box below. And now, back to Crossroads.
Welcome back. Spies from Russia, China, and Iran are getting more aggressive within the United States, and they're actually targeting people living here in our country, including those who dare speak out against them. Now, Airmail said this. It says, while Xi Jinping, head of the CCP, purges his military leadership at home, which, by the way, I meant to talk about. They're saying that while Xi is purging his military, he's also ramping up repression of perceived enemies within the United States. I want to give my take on this because a lot of you probably heard about it and you're like, geez, Josh, what's going on? In China right now, Xi Jinping has been fighting with his own military. Those of you who've watched Crossroads for a while know that I've talked about this. I said before that Xi Jinping basically lost control of the military. Why is that? The Central Military Commission purged some of his key allies. You have different factions within China. None of them are good. You don't have good guy, bad guy. It's just bad guy against worse guy, or bad guy or worse guy against worse guy. Basically, they purged some of Xi Jinping's key allies. Xi Jinping took that as a personal affront towards him and went and repurged all of them. Now the military commission is pretty bare bones. Xi Jinping is sitting at a long table with like 1 or 2 other people. He purged the military commission, the leadership. Now, some would say, geez, this looks like something big is going on in China. That is correct. There were rumors of a military coup that was being organized against Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping kind of put that down. We'll have to see what happens with this. But as I said before, and those of you who watch Crossroads for a long time know that I have been saying Xi Jinping, we'll see how it goes now, but Xi Jinping did not control his military. He did not control the military. Now, by purging the military, what you're going to have to watch is him reappointing leadership in his own image. Now, some would say, you know, this looks pretty bad because he's not just purging people who are against him, he's even purging people who are kind of for him. These are the acts of a paranoid dictator that he's moving towards. Some would say, well, geez, that's the sign of the beginning of the end. Might be the case. The other side I would note, though, is we've seen it before. Mao Zedong did very similar things, so did Joseph Stalin. Sometimes what you're watching is the establishment of an ultimate dictatorship. Xi Jinping for a long time has been walking in the footsteps of Mao Zedong. Him doing that could allow him to keep power. That is a reality with it, by seizing the levers of power from everybody else. The other reality you're going to face, though, is he's going to be doing one of 2 things. He's either going... Let me be clear in my analysis. The CCP is more dangerous right now. They're actually a lot more dangerous right now. If Xi Jinping has just lost control of the military, if they were talking about launching a coup against him and he wants to replace them, what do you do with a military you don't trust? Well, you find a way to kill them. How do you kill your military? You start a war. How do you start a war? Well, you invade Taiwan or do something else stupid. Xi Jinping might just do that. He might just do that. Not only that, but he will probably launch some kind of internal movement to reassert dominance over the Chinese people. You could watch an uptick in domestic repression. And not only that, the CCP has a slogan, which goes back to even like... Sun Tzu and Art of War, which is, when you're strong, appear weak, right? Look weak. They're not going to project power. When you're weak, appear strong, project power. China internally is very weak right now. The Chinese Communist Party is very weak. In order to compensate for that, it will become more aggressive on the global stage. We see Xi Jinping already taking moves on this, calling for the establishment of the Chinese currency as a world reserve currency, trying to, again, replace the United States in its role with Europe and Canada and others, trying to sideline the United States. They're also right now taking moves to make an uptick in domestic or external repression even within the United States. Silencing dissidents, targeting their families, trying to make everybody be quiet so they control the narrative. And you're going to be watching all the little puppet media, all the news outlets and journalists that, dance along to the little Pied Piper tune. They're going to be prancing around, praising the CCP as well. You're going to be watching a lot of that. You're also going to be watching Chinese agents and a lot of people bought off by the CCP playing their game a lot more. Why is that? When you're weak, appear strong. They're going to be pulling all the strings to make them dance, and you're going to be watching a big show with this. Now, case in point here, it says, last November, 1 week before the opening night of Brooklyn's, right here in New York, inaugural Indie-China Film Festival, its organizer, Zhu Raccoon, was woken by the insistent vibration of the phone he uses to speak with friends and relatives back in China. It says Zhu picked up to hear his father's voice and knew immediately that something was wrong. It says his father, who lives in Guangdong, told him to be careful and not to do anything that would be bad for China. Don't do anything bad for China, son. It says he then began to repeat himself. Zhu stopped him. He knew his father was referring to the film festival and suspected the Chinese authorities had forced his father to call him. This was confirmed not long afterward when Zhu heard from a friend who shares his old studio space in Beijing and said, quote, she told me she was taken away by security forces. She was very scared. It says the officers had questioned her and searched the studio premises, she said, and given her a message to pass on to Zhu. His actions were dangerous, meaning we're going to hurt you if you keep doing it. Because how is it dangerous? It means they're going to do something to him. And said that, quote, he would face consequences for them if he returned to China. Meaning they're going to harm his friends, his family, and if he ever goes back to China, him as well. It says there were no more calls, messages, and emails from filmmakers and other contributors to the festival over the following days. Not only those based in China, but also in the US, as well as Europe, the United Kingdom, and Japan. This is happening all around the world, in other words. It said they all sounded scared and told Zhu they no longer wished to be involved. He decided he would have to cancel Indie China. They were so afraid of threats from the CCP that they canceled a film festival in Brooklyn, New York. A film festival right here in New York City was canceled because of threats from the Chinese Communist Party. Now, I can tell you firsthand, I've dealt with this. For several years, I had Chinese agents threatening to kill me to my face. People with the United Front Work Department tied in with tongs active in New York City, who never went to jail, by the way. I have colleagues who have very regularly gotten phone calls because, again, they're journalists who have exposed the CCP, gotten phone calls from family members in China telling them never come home because if they do, Chinese agents will arrest them and probably kill them. This is very common for people outside of China when you dare criticize the CCP. And as a regular critic of the CCP, I can attest that this is very much the case. On that front, you have many organizations extremely active in the United States who basically have nothing done against them by our government. The United Front Work Department basically runs around scot-free, doing everything they can to undermine our government, to compromise government officials, to invite business leaders back to China, to co-opt what they call the civil society. What is that? Journalists, CEOs, C-suite executives, your tech guys, big businesses, of course, investors, a big target of theirs, college professors, people of influence otherwise, and government officials. They invite them back to China, they bribe them, they wine them, they dine them, they Epstein-style compromise them using honey traps, and then they get them in their pockets. The Chinese Communist Party has, unfortunately, very large influence outside of China through blackmail, bribery, and the like. This is the work of the United Front Work Department, still, unfortunately, extremely active in just about every country in the world, including the United States, including Canada, including Taiwan, although Taiwan has outlawed the United Front to a large extent, including Japan, including most of Western Europe. I would even add to this, in fact, that many governments in Western Europe even openly cooperate with them. Did you know that Italy actually allowed Chinese police to patrol its streets for a while? Canada, its own intelligence agency, as I briefly mentioned before, its own intelligence agency, CSIS, had warned even back in the 90s that the Chinese Communist Party was compromising its government officials, was controlling its own government. That was from the intelligence services in Canada warning about that. What has been done since then? Well, now that this is becoming more aggressive, this is what you refer to as transnational repression. This is becoming a lot more aggressive. Maybe it will get more attention from within the United States, at least. We've reported before that Shenyun Performing Arts, a New York-based performing arts company, regularly faces death threats, rape threats, bomb threats against its dancers, against its performances in the United States, coming from China, and this happens on an ongoing basis. Why is that? If you dare speak out against the CCP, if you dare challenge the CCP, if you make them look bad, if you tell the truth, they will target you. And I would add to this too, if you see news outlets that basically have no pushback from China, why is that? Because they're playing their game. Interesting stuff, right? Now, meanwhile, non-citizens, speaking of them in the United States, non-citizens can still vote in our elections. And this is actually through a court order now. A federal judge blocked a Trump order that was trying to stop non-citizens from voting in our elections. Town Hall said this: a federal judge has permanently enjoined President Donald Trump's executive order that requires citizenship to vote. It says the January 30th order from the U.S. District Judge Colleen Kollar-Kotelly consolidated the 3 lawsuits from the League of United Latin American Citizens. What's a Latin American citizen as opposed to an American citizen, right? We have American citizens. What's a Latin American citizen? Is that an American voter? We don't know. They have 3 lawsuits from the League of United Latin American Citizens, the Democratic National Committee, and the League of Women Voters Educated Fund versus Trump and the Republican National Committee. And it says the ruling reads in part, quote, the court shall declare that 2 provisions from the executive order, both purporting to impose new requirements for verifying the U.S. citizenship of people registering to vote or applying to receive absentee ballots, are inconsistent with the constitutional separation of powers and cannot be lawfully implemented. Now, briefly on this, right? One of the criticisms against Trump's executive order on that is, well, it was meant to go after non-citizens voting in our elections. Prove that you're a citizen. Many on the Democrat side criticized it, noting that it was also kind of the equivalent of voter ID. Not like you have to get like a voter card, but you have to like show your driver's license. Basically, making our elections as secure as your local Quickie Mart when you go and buy a bottle of beer. Basically making our elections as secure as driving a car where you have to show your driver's license. Basically making our, the future of the United States at least as secure as like a kid trying to buy booze. But it says here, the court shall permanently enjoin the relevant defendants from taking any action to implement or give effect to those provisions. It says the ruling follows Trump's administration pursuing election integrity. Last week, the FBI executed a search warrant in Fulton County, Georgia, related to the 2020 presidential election. Because you might remember Fulton County, that was when, you might remember election night 2020, Trump was winning effectively based on normal votes and number of voters. There was no chance that he was going to lose based on the projection. And then Fulton County had a plumbing issue. They shut down the elections. And then a bunch of other counties just did the same thing for some reason. And then a bunch of Biden votes just showed up. And there was a vertical spike in Biden votes and then continued the same trajectory. And then Biden won the election, obviously. They're actually now getting the documents from that related to 2020 because the FBI just raided them. We'll find out what happens with that. But it says here on April 1st, the U.S. Supreme Court will hear a challenge on Trump's executive order that blocks birthright citizenship also, because Trump is trying to make it so that if you come here and have a kid and the kid becomes an American citizen, you can't just do that and then bring in your friends and your family and lie about it and say you're 18 when you're not, or under 18 when you're not, or marry your brother and get them citizenship. He's trying to make it so you can't do this kind of thing, and part of that also is going after birthright citizens. We'll see what happens with that. Some are suggesting, well, Trump could repeal citizenship for people of God. I don't think it's going to go that far. He wants to stop it, I believe, going forward, but we'll have to wait and see. On another topic, though, rumors have been going around that the Trump administration may actually back off of its efforts for mass deportations. And the allegation you've seen in a lot of media is this. They say, well, look, the midterms are coming up. This is not a popular issue. There's a lot of pushback. Just look at the people fighting against ICE, fighting against them, hitting ICE officers with their car, dying as martyrs as they get shot while trying to, bring a gun to a protest and then brandishing it, then having it go off. And they're martyrs. And America is rallying behind the people standing up against ICE. Now, is that really the case? No, it is not. Polling actually shows, bipartisan, even New York Times polling and far left media, that basically over 50% of Americans, and this is among left-wing media polling, over 50% of Americans not only want mass deportations, they literally want every single illegal alien in the entire country deported. This is a big tent issue because, again, that's polling from left-wing media. If you look at deportations of even just criminal aliens, even among left-wing media, polling is over 80% in support of deporting all criminals who are illegal aliens. That is not to mention the Trump side of it, where Trump basically won the election on this issue. In other words, the media has been lying to you about this. But now guess what? Border Czar Tom Homan also said they're lying about something else. He says they are not, in fact, backing off of the efforts for mass deportations. And he actually made these comments during an appearance on Fox News' Hannity. Watch this.
The president wants to de-escalate the situation. And to set the record straight, because my staff said it's seen a lot of people that say President Trump's backing off on his promise of mass deportation. That's just untrue. My message up there was the same message that's been since January 20th, when President Trump took the Oval Office. We're going to have a mass deportation, but we're going to prioritize the arrest of criminals and public safety threats. I said from day one, if you're in the country illegally, you're not off the table. I looked at the numbers just about 15 minutes ago, Sean. President Trump's been in office just over a year. We got over 700,000 deportations between the Border Patrol and ICE. That's a record.
Now, that's an interesting statement. Basically, what he's saying is, no, we are not backing off the efforts for deportations. He's noting that Trump and his administration have deported around 700,000 illegal aliens. About 2 million have self-deported, bringing us up to just under 3 million. In 1 year, if Trump continues that over the next 3 years of his administration, you might have quite a few people deported. Part of the anticipation also is that self-deportations will rise. Many are noting, well, geez, Trump, 700,000 deported. Obama kind of deported more people than that. The other side of the argument is a lot of the Obama deportations were, border related. Trump has basically stopped all illegal crossings altogether. So if you take that into account, you could quantify it in a lot of different ways. The issue you're having under the Biden administration alone, around 10 million people were brought into the country and given temporary protection status and other things. The Trump deportations at the current rate will basically, if it goes at the current rate, basically hit the threshold of just bringing us back to where we were before Joe Biden's administration. That's basically where it's going to be at. We'll have to see where it goes. That is the current effort with it. Again, you will probably see a lot more deportations, at least through self-deportation. They've actually increased the amount of money they give people. It's, I believe, over $2,000 now instead of $1,000 at $2,500. They're actually increasing the award to self-deport. And as things move forward, you'll probably also see Trump dealing with sanctuary city policies and other things, you probably see the numbers go up as his administration moves forward. Now, look, another topic, I know a lot of you want to hear about this. There are more Epstein documents now released. You might remember, bipartisan in Congress, they voted to release the Epstein files. This has been an ongoing issue, a lot of back and forth. They released some of them. They did not release a lot of them. They said they have to redact them. Some of the images include things they can't really release because it's images of sexual abuse of children. You know what I mean? You can't really distribute that. They have about 3.5 million pages of Epstein documents now released. Some of the claims are shocking. And look, I think we can talk about it now because, frankly, both chambers of Congress passed it, Democrats and Republicans, overwhelmingly, with the exception of like one vote that noted these are unverified claims, and this sets a terrible precedent for just releasing unverified claims because it'll destroy people's reputations using unsubstantiated claims. They're now released. Trump signed it. They're now out. What do they show? They show basically what a lot of people have been suspecting has been happening. But my take on it is this. The challenge you're having with these documents is there are verified and unverified claims. There are emails getting mixed in with things that a random drug addict or homeless guy was literally telling to like the FBI. All of this is kind of being conflated into a meta-narrative, and it's important to kind of look at the credibility of each individual claim. Let me give you my take on some of this. One of the allegations that came out, for example, a photograph of Zoran Mamdani, the current mayor of New York City, is a kid. It looks like a teenager, roughly. And he and his mom are with Jeffrey Epstein. Currently, based on the facts I've been seeing, it looks like this is a valid photograph. This does tie him, at least in an event, to him. The problem is just being in an event does not mean you were involved in any other way. But it is pretty interesting because people are saying, well, geez, I thought this was some random upstart guy. Why was he with Jeffrey Epstein? We don't know. We don't know the facts on that yet. But there is a childhood photo that is coming out. It's making a lot of rounds. Another of the big things going around is Bill Gates, former head of Microsoft, and emails exchanged with Jeffrey Epstein. Again, we don't know if these claims are true. This is based solely on an email exchange and solely based on us trying to make conclusions from the emails. Basically, the conversation is that it seems that Bill Gates was concerned he had contracted an STD from a Russian prostitute introduced to him through Epstein and wanted to give his wife medication to maybe cover it up, to hide the fact that he had been with a prostitute. Epstein then cuts ties with Bill Gates and then leaves the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which he was part of for a while. It seems they had a falling out over this. We don't know the full context. Again, none of this is going to court, at least not yet. We don't really know what the facts are. That is the allegation in the emails. The most shocking claim, I will tell you, and I'll tell you kind of my take on it, which is basically that it's from an unverified source, one deemed to not be credible. It was never investigated. And it's literally a guy who was a homeless drug addict, called up the FBI and just told him a story. This is the one probably making rounds that people are hearing a lot of rumors about. There were allegations from an individual who said that as a kid he was at a yacht party and he saw a bunch of wealthy, crazy billionaires like eating babies and eating their intestines and abusing kids, and I mean really horrible things. Talking about former heads of state there. The claims within the document is this. The FBI says that the individual was not credible. The individual appeared to not be of stable mind, was homeless. I believe he was at the point living with his parents, was a drug addict, and this was an unverified random claim. This is and basically it was deemed to be so not credible they never bothered to investigate it. This is going to be the problem you're finding with a lot of this, and this is actually one of the I would say debatable, I don't know, I kind of think people should see it, but debatable reasons on why they didn't want to release these things. You have a lot of unverified claims. Now, what's the reality with the FBI and documents like this? The reality is this. If you were to call the FBI tomorrow, if you, or to make even an anonymous claim, you can even anonymously make a case, actually. You could call them and you could say that Jeffrey Epstein and Gilgamesh from the Epic of Gilgamesh and E.T. were having a dinner party, and you were there and you saw them conspiring to, control the world, and E.T. did not want to go home. He did not want to go home. He didn't even want to phone home, in fact. And you tell the FBI this, they would have to legally document it, and it would be in these files. And so that's been the concern that Trump's been raising. Trump was saying that there were people basically inserting claims into these files with the intent of undermining him, defaming him, and so on. That was one of the allegations. It is a fact. That is how these things work. You can call the FBI, and don't do this, but you can call the FBI and tell them basically anything, and they have to document it. If you tell them you want to meet with them and you have some crazy claim, they have to meet with you. They don't really have a choice. They have to record it. They have to document it. And so that means if you have like a homeless drug addict who had like a week-long drug binge and comes out of it and hallucinated something and they wants to tell the FBI, they have to sit and listen to him. And it's going to be in those files. That's why they have verified claims and unverified claims. That's why they say that some sources are credible, some sources are not credible. I'm not telling y'all what to believe or not to believe with this. Maybe this stuff is true. They never investigated it. That's the reality. They never investigated that claim. But again, the nature of unverified claims, which is a lot of these documents, is that. And not only that, but again, anonymous claims, meaning it could have been anybody making a phone call. And you can tell them anything, they have to document it. You can effectively pollute evidence pools, especially if documents are going to be released using methods like this. That was the concern raised by Donald Trump previously on why he didn't want to have them all released. That was what he was alluding to, that there were people who inserted documents with the intent of doing this. That was the allegation. This was done intentionally. Is that the case? Is it the case that this was all a bunch of smoke and mirrors? Is it the case that it's real? We don't know. Where it's going to have to go from here, which I've been saying, you can't release things like this to the public and not investigate it. That's the reality. Because if they don't investigate this now, this is like, look, people have been debating since the assassination of JFK, what happened with the assassination. This is that on steroids. This is like the mega conspiracy. And now, in many people's eyes, validated through an information dump. They have the documents for it. If they do not investigate this, the conspiracies will never die. And again, we will never really know either whether it's true or false. Another big point with this, they note that Epstein was actually working, at least partly paid for, by the KGB. I can tell you as somebody who's actually investigated a lot of this stuff, there is validity to this. I reported this literally years ago. And a lot of people gave me a hard time. So like, it wasn't the KGB, it was Mossad. Let me tell you the facts on that. Okay. Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, was actually investigated by the FBI as a potential KGB agent. This was back like during the Cold War. You can read the documents on it. How do I know it? I read the documents. I actually read them. I read the FBI reports. They were public. Nobody ever talks about them. Basically, he was a suspected KGB agent. He ran some like communist newspapers. They believe those were front operations for the Soviet Union. Many media lied about this in their coverage. They say the FBI investigated and found no evidence. That is not true. In the FBI documents, they believed he was in fact a KGB agent, but they didn't have enough evidence to actually prove it. And so that was the connection. In my previous reporting, before I did a TV show, I've been an investigative journalist since 2008. I've done reports on this stuff. I also mentioned the Komsomol camps in the Soviet Union were actually grooming children to use as honey traps, and that was part of a KGB operation. It would make sense, frankly. I've reported this previously. On the Mossad point, the allegation on that, which has made rounds and people just take to be whatever, like I don't care about this stuff that much in terms of like the Israel narrative and everything. I'll just tell you the facts. These are the facts, okay? If it was the opposite, I'd tell you too. These are the facts on that. The claim on Mossad being behind this came from one book, and I know this because I read all this stuff, okay? It came from one book that did not have traceable sources, so it's unverified claims in a random book that claimed that Mossad agents showed up to his funeral, right? Being, again, Robert Maxwell. That was the basis of that entire claim. That entire claim was based on a random book with no sources. What I can tell you is there are sources on the KGB connection. I could not find any sources on the Mossad connection. That's the reality of it. I know people like to hear it. I've reported on this previously. The documents now coming out basically show that I was right the entire time. Okay. There's more evidence this is actually tied in with KGB and the Soviet Union. Also, in terms of Trump and the allegations against him, the allegations were that he was accused of this previously. There was a young girl, I believe she was 16, I want to say, made allegations against Trump, had a private investigator, the family hired him. I know this because I actually interviewed the private investigator. I actually interviewed the guy. There is no credible evidence tying Trump to that. They actually dropped the charges for that reason. But again, you have a lot of the media talking about it still. There is no evidence. I know this because not only have I looked into it, and not only have I read the documents, I even interviewed the private investigator. There is no evidence. And so again, you're going to be hearing a lot of media talking about stuff. These are my takes. I know my takes go against the grain quite a bit. The reason is because unlike a lot of these journalists and talking heads, I actually read the documents. That's my take. Anyways, that said, questions, comments, anything you want to talk about, leave it in the chat. Let's jump into it. Let's see here. And I'll note real quick too, honey traps using kids are real. China, the Chinese Communist Party makes this look like makes this look like I don't know why people are not talking about that, because that is a regular, ongoing, happens to this day issue and is going on as we speak. Like that should be investigated, their use of honey traps, including kids. The CCP does this on a mass scale, like seriously. It's happening literally as we speak, and very little is done about it. Question TMA, you're saying Trump just started the Board of Peace to replace the failing United Nations, which has outlived its purpose. Bravo. It's a big deal. So, I mean, what's my take on what Trump is doing with the United Nations? In my take, he's actually making a good move. What is the United Nations in my eyes? It actually does serve some benefit. I'm not saying that the entire thing should be thrown out. I do think that I know a lot of people talking about human rights, trying to raise awareness, have actually had pretty good success going to Geneva, talking to them. You do have a lot of good people there. You legitimately do. The problem they have, though, is you have very powerful seats held by very totalitarian, very evil regimes. China has massive control over it. In terms of that, a lot of it was started by, going back to Alger Hiss, who turned out to be a Soviet agent. A lot of this is part of a Soviet program, and part of this was to undermine the U.S. standing in the world by giving, shared global power to totalitarian and communist regimes. I think that America, I'm still very pro-America. I think America still represents, frankly, the best we got, okay? You can say, well, what about the problems here? Show me a single government in all of human history that did not have some problem at some point with corruption or chaos or crazy people. They do not exist. Why? Welcome to human society, okay? Welcome to human nature. We're flawed people. You're always going to have corrupt people. You're always going to have crazy people. You're always going to have the occasional tyrant, and you're going to have people who can stand up against him. The United States and the American system is the only one, to a large extent, that allows people to speak out, to stand up, to organize, and so on, without being put down. That is what the American system represents. Yes, freedom is a bit chaotic. Don't fall into the trap of Rome, which, according to the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, fell into tyranny because, quote, people grew weary of chaotic freedom, right? The United States and the American system and the American value of freedom is the best we got. And I think that having America share a seat of global governance with countries that do not believe in that believe that the average person needs to be controlled, that the government is your nanny or your big brother, and big brother knows best, and you need to get in your little corner and sit down, or it's going to punch you in the stomach. I don't think they should be given seats at the table, frankly. And so I do believe that America imposing kind of a replacement of this order rooted in American values, which are, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and the Constitution, a global order rooted in the protection of God-given rights. I think that's the best we're going to have. Show me otherwise, frankly. And so I do think that is a good idea. A rejection of globalism and a reassertion that, America stands for something. We stand for something. De Toto 2, Sun Tzu, you're saying, Sun Tzu explains explains the multiple unconventional battles we are already in with the CCP. Yeah, it's true to an extent. So Sun Tzu is not the only book of unconventional warfare, I should note, though. One book I could recommend to all of you, one I very much enjoy, is called The 7 Military Classics of Ancient China. It includes Sun Tzu. It includes many others. If you were to take my recommendation, I believe that Sun Tzu is among the least interesting of the military books. My personal favorite would be the Secret Teachings, would be the 6 Secret Teachings. Which, if you read that book, the 7 Military Classics, it would be, I believe it's the first in that book. It's very good. I would also add, though, that it's true, the CCP does pull a bit from Sun Tzu. I would say it actually pulls more from Machiavellianism, though. Communism is more directly tied in with Machiavellianism, which is the creation of a mafia state to control a country. Controlling a country using the mafia state and kind of the underhanded tactics it uses. Sun Tzu talks about a lot of warfare as deception. Machiavellianism talks about the total avoidance of warfare, using criminality and corruption. The CCP is closer to Machiavellianism, although they do implement a lot of Sun Tzu. One of the key ones, as I've noted, is when you're weak, appear strong. When you're strong, appear weak. This was, again, even Deng Xiaoping in China a couple leaders back, 3 leaders back. He was big on this. The peaceful rise of China narrative was based on Sun Tzu. Right? China poses no threat. Fear not. We're peaceful. We love peace. The peaceful rise of China. Sun Tzu. When you're weak, appear strong. When you're strong, appear weak. They wanted to come up. They wanted to make trade deals, and they wanted to get their hands into all the piggy banks of the world. That's how they did it. They wanted the factories, and that's how they did it. See more butts. You're saying, Josh, are you familiar with the 100-year marathon? Yeah, that's Michael Pillsbury's book, right? The 100-year marathon that China is running that will end in 2049. Yes, I am. So the CCP does have an agenda leading up to 2049 where they believe they can effectively destroy the United States. They can become the dominant military power in the world, and they can effectively have achieved their goals. What does that mean? It means prior to 2049, they have their wars. It means prior to 2049, they have their achievements on the global stage of economic warfare, business warfare, media warfare, culture warfare, drug warfare, subversion. We talk about Sun Tzu and Machiavellianism. A book written by 2 Chinese colonels called Unrestricted Warfare lays out a lot of these strategies. 72 military tactics designed for this. In fact, non-military, trans-military, and unconventional military. Again, as I noted, culture warfare, media warfare, business warfare, biological warfare, germ warfare. All of this is written in there. They talk about it. It's why the CCP uses its military to steal intellectual property. It's why the CCP launders the money for the drug cartels. It's drug warfare. It's actually written as one of their strategies in their own book. They don't even hide it. That's, again, part of all of this. And see more notes, yeah. So there's a book by Michael Pillsbury, 100-Year Marathon, that does explain a lot of, I believe in that book he explains the, it's a strategy the CCP has called the Assassin's Mace strategy, I believe is one of the things he talks about in there. Assassin's Mace, also called the Trump card strategy, not related to Donald Trump. Trump card is when you pull that ace out of your sleeve, right? The idea with it is they have developed means to defeat the United States. And what is that? Well, unrestricted warfare as the unconventional means to achieve it, then leading up to their actual war plans, which would be surprise attack, the destruction of our satellites, wiping out our missile defense systems, our missile tracking systems, our GPS systems, missile guidance systems, communication systems. They would then use EMP attacks, probably they call it a HEMP attack, HEMP, a high Earth orbit nuclear detonation for the purpose of using EMP. This is actually written about in their own documents. They would fry the American electric grid, bring us to our knees. You'd have a good portion of America die out within about a year on that. And then they would do rapid strikes, decapitation strikes against the key engineers and facilitators at all of our military bases, wiping out the key talent that basically wiping out all the enabling forces of our military. They believe that by doing that, they will not have to engage directly with our military. They would do this within 2 weeks, and the goal would be to bring us to the negotiating table within 2 weeks. They do not want a protracted war with the United States. That strategy is called the Assassin's Mace. And roughly for the CCP, they see the timeline on military prowess, at least until now, because Trump is basically now taking back the factories, rebuilding military production, making sure we have the rare earth minerals to actually keep a military productive, to build up the wartime production, which we did not have. That would have been the only case which this would have worked against us. Trump is actually fixing that. But the CCP projection short of that would have been about 2035. War would have been 2035, 2049 would have been CCP dominance. That was their timetable. That was their timetable. And I've been sounding the alarm on this for a long time. Watch my documentary. Watch my documentary on this about the Chinese Communist Party. It's called The Final War. The Final War. You can watch it on Epoch TV. I talked about all of this. I predicted the Russia-Ukraine war. I predicted Iran. I predicted all this stuff. It's all in that documentary. I said it all before it happened. Why did I say it all before it happened? Because the CCP told us they were going to do it. And you're saying, well, what does China have to do with it? Everything. Everything. They're the money behind terrorism. It's not Iran, it's the Chinese Communist Party. They're the ones facilitating the drug trade. They're the key enablers, even according to the Trump administration, the key enablers behind the Russia-Ukraine war. They were trying to start a war in Latin America. I warned about all of this. And if you watch that documentary and understand, hey, Josh said this before any of this happened, why is that important? You'll actually understand a lot of what's going on right now. A lot of what's going on right now, at least in my eyes, because I've been researching this for close to 2 decades. I've been a journalist since 2006, and a lot of it on this stuff. In my eyes, what you're watching is a Hail Mary, and it's working. Right? You're watching it work. Like him, don't like him, what Trump is doing right now, I think probably has already avoided World War III. I can say pretty confidently, we've probably avoided World War III. I think we would have had it. I think we would have had it probably within this year or next year, had this not happened. Based on the timetables I'm aware of and based on what I've been reporting, and frankly, I've been right on every single time, we would have had World War III. I can say in my personal view, and based on close to 2 decades of research, we have now successfully avoided that. Watch my documentary on this and you'll see that I predicted almost everything that happened. Another question here. Secret Bassings. You're saying China is the second largest economy, but is still a developing country. Where is all the money going? Well, two things. Mass corruption and smoke and mirrors. That's where it's all going. So first of all, China has a trait, okay? This is a problem they've had in the past, but it's especially a problem now. Let me show you how money transfers to China. Local Chinese Communist Party official marches down to his local, local production facility and says, "Comrades, we must make great again the infrastructure of the great China. Behold my plan. Build a golden statue of me to commemorate this." And he salutes. And, they build the golden statue. And then he's like, "I've created this infrastructure project. We're going to have the housing project to house the people." What happens, okay? They allocate the money to it. That corrupt official steals about 50% of it, right? He just steals it. He puts it into hard assets. He buys real estate in other countries like the United States. He gives it to his kids going to like Hartford or wherever, because like they call Hartford the CCP's school. He has the kid or his family members buy real estate in America and Canada and stuff like that, and he launders all the money. Just launders the heck out of it. Gets it out of China. Just robs them blind. The remaining 50% goes to the next level down. The next official says, "Great idea, comrade," steals about 50% of it too. Does the same thing. Gives it to family members. They launder it for them. They buy real estate. They buy diamonds. They go to like Louis Vuitton and they like walk around the store just buying all the, you've probably seen this by the way, buy all the handbags and stuff because they're laundering money, okay? They do that. Goes down to the next guy. He does the same thing. They steal because it's a massive bureaucracy. And they're communist. Like, who's going to hold them in check? Their kids can literally go beat another kid to death and record it and post it on the internet and say, "Ha ha, I'm a Communist Party official's kid. What are you going to do to me?" Like, they literally do this. They do all this. Finally gets down to the construction guy. And what do? They cut a bunch of corners. They're like, "Well, yeah, we could build this with the current money, but we could make like 10% more if instead of using cement, we get a bunch of Coke bottles and fill them with dirt and shove it into like the walls. And, if we dilute all the spackle with water, we'll make like 20% more. Let's do it, comrades." And they do that. And that's why they have like rebar you can literally bend with your arm. That's why you have people going to Chinese construction. They're taking their finger and just sticking it through the walls. It's because of this. They launder all the money. They steal all the money. Then it gets down to the guys on the ground, and then they cut every corner you can possibly cut. And they build what they call tofu buildings. That's where a lot of the Chinese money goes. The other side is a lot of their businesses are just as corrupt. A lot of them are Ponzi schemes. This is why the CCP does not allow even Wall Street and a lot of the Chinese traded businesses. They don't even let you audit them. You're not allowed to audit them. This is why in China, if you work in finance and you talk about the real numbers of the Chinese GDP, they will literally accuse you of being a spy and imprison you and possibly kill you. They even strengthened these laws within the last couple years. They don't want information on the economy getting out. This is why most Chinese dissidents will tell you, and I will tell you too, the Chinese economy is a Ponzi scheme. It's a massive Ponzi scheme. And I would argue a lot of the big investors and big businesses 100% know this. They know it. It's a gigantic Ponzi scheme. And they're just robbing you blind. Like they're robbing the world blind with it. There's a lot more I could go into on this too. Like the way that they cover up the factories. A great book on this, Poorly Made in China. It's an older book, but it's still relevant. Poorly Made in China, if you want to read about the attempts to investigate this stuff. There's another book called China RX about how the horrible standards of safety, health, everything like that are the medications. China RX, you can read that too. Great books. It's a gigantic Ponzi scheme. That's the answer to your question. All right. Anyways, happy Monday, everybody. Let me know what you think in the chat. I don't know. What do you think of my take on this stuff? Do you agree with me, disagree with me? Let me know. Again, I think a lot of my takes are probably things you won't hear from a ton of people, at least not in the mainstream media especially. Let me know what you think. Agree with me, disagree with me, have other insights, think I'm missing something. Let me know in the chat. That said, thank you all for being here. And as always, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.